All right, so we're going to go over chapters 4, 5, and 6, the main points. And let's start off with chapter 4. It says interactions. So, number 1, how have societies and interactions changed throughout history? So, first you have the hunter gatherers, and societies were relatively small. Um, Everybody was fairly equal because everybody was just trying to survive. The communities, the tribes that people lived in were fairly small because you really couldn't sustain very many people. You were constantly moving around, and food was very unsteady. You had to follow the food supply. So then when societies moved to agriculture, when they decided to stay in one location to be able to farm, societies got bigger, and you saw this is when you first start to see some inequality in society. Really, in the hunter gatherers, everybody was poor. Nobody really had more than anybody else because nobody really had anything other than what they could, carry on themselves as they moved from place to place. In agriculture, you had in agricultural societies, you had some people that were better farmers or had better land, and so they started to acquire more, more crops that they were able to then trade with others. So this is when you first started to see some inequalities. And with farming societies, you started seeing people using tools, and like I had said, that they had more food, and that you started to see some surplus. Now, in the mid 1800s, early 1900s, you had the Industrial Revolution. This is when society started getting even bigger and more urban, more city-like. People started moving from country areas where they were farming and self-sufficient to more city areas where the factories were, so that they could get a factory job. This is when you started to see even greater inequality because you had some people like the capitalists like, say, Rockefeller, who would have the material goods and then change them into products that could then be sold. So you started to see greater inequality. Now, today, in post industrial, we're in a globalized world. Societies are still very urban, very city like. Our societies are even bigger, but what we're starting to see is we're post-industrial. Whereas in the Industrial Revolution, there were lots of factories, right? Now today, what you're seeing are these factories are going off of our shores. They're going to, say, like Mexico. They're going to other countries where labor can cost less, essentially, and there are less regulations. So you have these factories that used to be on our shores are going off of our shores, and we're seeing deindustrialization. We're seeing the technology and service type jobs staying here in the United States, and these type jobs tend to require more education. So we're seeing even more inequality, and we're seeing more inequality in terms of those that have a college education, those that have capital, and so on. So from hunter-gatherers, where there was the societies were small, and everybody was pretty much poor, and then you start to see inequality grow, and you start to see societies become more urban. Now, our interactions changed throughout history, and we're going to talk about this. So, why did societies change? Number 2, Marx. Every time you see Marx, you should think of how capitalism brought inequality. Okay, so Marx said that societies change as economies change. We went from agriculture, right, being pretty self-sufficient, to more of an industrial, more of a capitalist society where it was about money, 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 working for wages, investing capital into businesses, supply and demand. So you start to see bourgeoisie, so like the owners, the capitalists, and the proletariats, the workers. There's have and have not. So societies change according to Marx as economies change. Now Weber, soon as you hear Weber's name, you should think of that web, right? And all these Protestants that want to get out of church, and they're running towards the door. They're like, I gotta go work, I gotta go work, and so that I can save money and get more money. And when they get to the door at the church, they see this great big spider web and they can't get out, and they're all fighting. All these Protestants are fighting to get out so that they can go work hard. So Weber said that societies change as ideas change, as ideas surrounding religion. So the Protestant work ethic, this idea that if you just work hard, you'll be rewarded from God, that helped to bring about capitalism. It essentially took the sin away that Catholic religion had. That really Catholic religion was like, if you have more money than what you need, then you should be giving this away. You should be giving it to the church. You should be giving it to the needy. The Protestant work ethic, on the other, the Calvinistic branch of the Protestant religion, said, hey, you know what? If you work hard, you save your money, and you invest it, and you're able to get more money, hey, that's a reward from God. All right. So Durkheim said that societies change as our bonds change, as our connections change. So as we shifted our bonds in country or kind of agricultural, rural kind of societies to more urban, more city, more industrial societies, our bonds, our connections with others change. Remember Durkheim. Every time you hear Durkheim, you should think of the Heimlich maneuver, and how Durkheim walked in and tried to give somebody the Heimlich maneuver when he saw that they were unconscious. But in reality, the person that he was trying to give the Heimlich maneuver to had actually killed himself because he felt disconnected. He felt that he was no longer connected like he was when he was living in the country. And so he felt this disconnect. He felt that his bonds, his connections had changed when he moved to the city. So a term that you need to know is anomie, and really what that means is there was this chaos during this industrial age, during the mid 1800s, early 1900s, with the Industrial Revolution, where there was this chaos, this unrest, as shared norms and bonds started to change, and it left many people feeling alienated, many people feeling disconnected. So Marx said that societies change as economies change. Weber said that societies change as ideas or religion changes. And Durkheim said that societies change as our bonds, our connections change. All right, number 3. What is meant by society is socially constructed? Okay, so what this means is that we create our social world, what we believe and what our norms are, through our social interactions. We construct our ideas of what we need to do and what things mean, and we behave accordingly. So the ideas of what's masculine and feminine, we created these ideas that girls wear pink and boys wear blue, and that women are more of the caregivers and men are more the providers. All this stuff, we constructed these ideas. And one of the videos that I'm going to have you watch is going to show how we construct our social reality. This whole society, all of our norms and our beliefs, we came up with this, meaning society, people came up with all these ideas of what is normal and how we should behave. So therefore, we can also deconstruct society. We can change things. And we're starting to see that with masculinity and femininity. Whereas in our agricultural age, an early industrial age, being a woman meant staying home and being the caregiver, whereas being the man meant being the breadwinner, right? And we're starting to see that change in the post-industrial age, where men and women, their roles are quite flexible, you know? All right, so there will be a video that you can watch on this. What is hegemony, and provide some examples. Hegemony is when we manipulate ideas for consent, all right? When the have-nots agree to things that benefit the haves. So you're going to have a sheet that I'm going to attach that you need to do. It's going to be front and back, and you read about examples of hegemony. And then you're going to answer the 2 questions that are in the bottom in the box, okay? And you'll hand that in for next class. I may also include a video about hegemony. And hegemony or hegemony is not using power to get people to go along with your ideas. It's telling people that hey, if you do this, this actually benefits you, when in reality, it doesn't benefit them. It actually benefits the haves in society. So examples of that are maybe the SAT, that we say that we need to, people are told that you need to go do the SAT so that you can get this number that will let colleges know, how likely you are to succeed in college. When in reality, SAT scores are more correlated with income than they are actual, say, intelligence or likelihood to graduate from college, because there's a number of other things that must be considered. People who get high SAT scores do not mean that they're have not that it that they have higher intelligence, per se. It could mean that they paid for to have tutors. They paid for the books that, they were able to get the books and tutors that taught them how to take the test, not to be more intelligent, but how to take the test, how to eliminate answers, to get the best answer. Um, so anyways, that's just one quick little example. I'm going to talk about it in class, give you an example of me getting my sister using hegemony to get my sister to do my laundry chores. So read that hegemony worksheet and answer those two questions. Okay, number 5, the term for how we repeat over and over, and then things become accepted as reality, habituation, habit. We do things over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then we just accept it that that's just how things are. This is just how things are. And over time, when things become accepted, the habituation, when we do things over and over and over again, and it becomes accepted into our institutions, into our schools, into our government, and so on, that's called institutionalization. And maybe you've heard that term, the institutionalization of racism or systemic racism, institutionalization of racism. And so I'm going to have a video that's going to look at how racism has become habituated or institutionalized into our society through, some examples of that is slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration. So there'll be a video to watch on that. What is the term for perception equals reality? That's called the Thomas theorem. In class, I'll tell you a story about Thomas the homeless man, and to help you remember it. And really, what the Thomas theorem is that a little kid, if he believes that there are ghosts, and it doesn't matter if ghosts are real or not, is that going to affect his behavior? Heck yeah, he's going to have a hard time sleeping. He's going to want to sleep in his parents' bed. So things don't have to be true for them to have an impact on reality. All right, politicians can say certain things that are not true, but they have an impact on how people will respond. I'll give you an example of what President Trump said about abortions. I'll give you an example in class, and I'll also tell you the story about Thomas the homeless man to help you remember that. So Thomas theorem is that perception equals reality. Things do not need to be true. If people believe them, they can have an impact on how people behave. Number 7, the term for when we label someone, they become that. That's called the self-fulfilling prophecy. So self-fulfilling prophecy. Growing up, I was labeled as the blondets, right? And it's so interesting. I don't know, I just became that. Everybody considered me the blonde twist because I was just bubbly and had a lot of energy and so on, and laughed a lot and such. And still to this day, when I go home to see my parents or I'm around some people that I went to high school with, I see myself fall into that role, fall into acting like that blonde ditz. All of a sudden I'll be like, and I'll be like, what the heck is that about? I'm more educated than all of you. But at the same time, I fall into the self-fulfilling prophecy. I start acting as I have been labeled.